why not sit back, relax, and take things easy like a Sunday morning? I'm your host, Shane Lockwood, and this is episode 73 of the podcast. And today is the 12th of November 2018. Today isn't Sunday, but that doesn't matter. I've been wanting to do a podcast for quite a while. The last episode was uploaded on the 23rd of September, and so I apologize for the delay. The delays have happened because I've been working, and it's not that I didn't have the time. A lot of it was about not having the mental energy, because when you work physical labor, or what I was doing was actually what they call construction cleaning. So while a construction site is going on, they're building buildings and things like that. There's a lot of dust, there's a lot of dirt, there's a lot of whole heap of stuff that needs to be cleaned. Then they bring in cleaners, but we were there early, and the work ran out. I was told that there may be work in a couple of weeks, and that there's 2 weeks worth of work cleaning the outside windows, but they weren't going to bring everybody back. They were just going to bring back a select few just for those 2 weeks worth of work. And then I was told, oh, nobody's lost their jobs, etc. Nobody has to hand their badges back. But yeah, I don't believe that at all. I think there was a select number of people that wanted to be, the supervisor wanted, and it was their little clique, and as a result, I am not working. The other thing that happened was that a friend of mine decided to, well, was roped into organising a wedding for her cousin. This wedding turned out to be the wedding from hell. I'll probably go into this in another particular podcast because I haven't written notes and things like that, but it was just a disaster. Everything you could imagine that could have gone wrong did go wrong, and worse. Everything from children falling into creeks and getting all covered head to toe in mud, to the best man forgetting the rings and it not being a joke, and the celebrant not being happy about that. Replacement rings were used, and then the reception hall had, well, I could go into that too. Let's just say that the bride decided to drink a whole heap of scotch, well past a responsible level of alcohol consumption was what you'd deem responsible level of alcohol consumption, and to the point where she couldn't actually say the word scotch, and yeah, and she was being encouraged to do that by the groom's friends and stuff like that. She bumped her head, and she pretty much left the wedding reception unconscious. She was sick in the car, and then we had to clean up the mess that was broken beer bottles, not beer bottles, broken bottles of alcohol of some description, probably spirits or wine or something, red wine. And yeah, had to clean up vomit and all sorts of stuff from the ladies' toilets, and it was just a really, really horrible mess. They've lost their deposit, and they got blacklisted from using a certain Masonic hall in Elizabeth that shall remain nameless. Anyway, I've said where it was, doesn't matter. But for those of you who are brand new, I'll sit back and relax and unwind a bit, just listen to the sound of my voice. Hopefully the next few podcasts I'll have a lot more interesting and positive things to say, and avoiding weddings and wedding receptions. And then I had to clean a friend's girlfriend's house. I didn't have to, but I offered to because she had an inspection coming up, and of course having to prepare for the wedding for her cousin, etc. She ordered a skip, which is like a huge metallic bin that is delivered on the back of a truck with a crane on the back of it. It's that heavy, and you just fill the skip, and a week later they come up and pick it up and take all the garbage away. And I went through a whole heap of stuff trying to get their home ship shape and things like that. So a lot of stuff going on. The other thing is that I often fight the perfectionism, the need to record a perfect podcast and things like that. I like to edit stuff, I like to script stuff where I can, but this is a little bit more free form. I've got rough notes of what I want to talk about. And if I care too much, I find myself editing. I could have ummed and ahed and then cut out all the ums and ahs, and so, oh my goodness. Normally, if I was a perfectionist, I would have stopped the podcast here and now and then started again. I've already started 3 times already, and I'm just going to keep going. So I apologize for those of you who prefer like a highly polished podcast. This isn't that. Maybe next time it will be. I'm going to be doing some professional stuff for my Patreon supporters. Now, I know that people sort of tend to flinch the moment you mention Patreon. Patreon is not what people think it is, or not the way I've set it up. It's not panhandling at all. The way I've set it up is it's busking, if that makes sense. So what happens is most people do use it, unfortunately, for panhandling, where they beg for money. Whereas the way I've got it set up is that if you donate, you are making a per episode donation. So it's not like a monthly fee where you get slugged. Like, for example, I didn't do a podcast episode in October, right? It would go against my principles to charge people for the month of October and not produce content. That's just not me, right? So because I'm producing this particular episode now on the 12th of November, what will happen is my Patreon supporters will be charged on the 5th of December for this particular episode. Okay. It's an incentive to produce stuff more often, but I more than often don't have the time to actually be able to sit down and do stuff. I'm not interested in rendering anybody bankrupt or anything like that. It's a minimum of like $1 per episode. If I could set it to less, I would, but that's Patreon's policies. All money goes into my PayPal account, actually. So for those of you who have donated through PayPal, it goes all in the same spot. So it doesn't actually go into my bank account at all. It just sits in my PayPal. And then with PayPal, I can use that to pay the annual fees and things for Spreaker, which is where I store this podcast and things like that. So those of you who do donate through Patreon, thank you very much. And those of you who've talked about it and then not, or found some sort of excuse not to, please consider it. I guarantee $1 or $2 a month is not like a maximum of like $5 a month. It's not going to bankrupt you in any way, shape, or form. I know what you guys are spending your money on because you broadcast it all over Facebook. Okay, it's less than the cost of, I don't know, a cup of coffee or at a restaurant or something like that. Right. So if you enjoy what I do, if you find that what I'm saying helps you to relax, and apologize for those of you who are hopefully listening to this to relax. I had a message from a friend by the name of Adam, and I can never pronounce his surname properly. I'm going to say Kochi, but I hope that's not offensive if I've stuffed it up. But he was asking me about meditation. So what I'm going to do is just explain meditation a little bit. Okay, I used to be a Buddhist, and I'm just okay. My screen's gone offline. It's back on again. Okay, I used to be a Buddhist. I was a Buddhist for about 3 years, and I left Buddhism because I saw a lot of Dalai Lama worship, and it goes against the grain of what Buddhism is. Buddhism was about being the best person you could possibly be, and everybody's equal. There's no hierarchies, there's no leaders, there's no whatever. So, of course, along comes the Dalai Lama. Everybody's putting him on quite literally golden thrones, and he's wearing massive crown things and elevating this person above other people and worshipping him. But then, if you do a bit of digging, he's not even a reincarnation of the Buddha. According to the belief system, he's a reincarnation of Sariputra, who is one of the last of the Buddha's disciples to actually become enlightened, and he did it the hard way, sort of thing. And that's where the story gets a bit dodgy. Anyway, with meditation is fairly simple. In fact, it's so simple that people want to put music behind it. People want to put other stuff on top and complicate things and have you go on mystical journeys and apply religious stuff and things like that, right? The basic premise of meditation, and I've done this before in previous podcasts, I do it a lot. At the beginning of this podcast, I say, why not sit back, relax, and take things easy like a Sunday morning? So the very first premise of the very first thing that you do when you meditate is you have to sit comfortably, right? Some people sit cross-legged in the lotus position or whatever. I have suggested at the beginning of this podcast that maybe you're in your favorite armchair or sitting on a couch, sitting on the sofa, maybe you're in bed horizontal. It doesn't matter, right? What you then do is you try and eliminate any external distractions, and there will be all sorts of stuff from phones and your computer, the Discord app binging every 5 minutes, every time someone wants to leave a message and stuff. Most of that stuff doesn't really even involve you. So it's about distancing yourself from external distractions. You close your eyes. You want to be in a fairly silent environment. Not 100% silent, but just a little bit. Some people have like mantras and things like that they go over and over and over. But you don't need that. You don't need chimes. You don't need incense. You don't need all this other stuff. You're just focusing on your breathing. So you're breathing in, and then you release it. So it's breathing out, breathing in through the nose, and then you're breathing out through the mouth. And you keep doing that in and out. You keep doing that over and over and over again. Some people think that your back should be perfectly straight when you do this sort of stuff. The idea is just to be comfortable, right? And you just focus on your breathing in and out, and you're letting go of everything. You can let go of your own body. You can let go of all sorts of thoughts and stuff like that. And you're just breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out. But you can use that once your mind is calm, because that's the point of meditation. You calm your mind down, and then you can start to dig into certain things. Now, you may find yourself meditating, let's see, but not necessarily in a forced sense, right? So if you're sitting on the, what's a better word, the commode, if you go to the restroom, for example, and you just sit there for a little bit before you have to do anything, right? You just sit there and you relax. Or you might be thinking about something else, you think, well, what's the motivation for this? Why do I feel this way? And you can develop a lot of insight into your own personality, why you think a certain way. Could you be right about certain things? Could you be wrong about certain things? Your past, is there anything in your past holding you back from achieving, what you want in life? You may find that when you're in the shower, for example, you can have insights and things like that, because the shower, your body is, I don't know, there's the feel of the water, so you're comfortable, but then you don't need to worry about your breathing and things like that necessarily. When you lather up and then rinse off, or you're washing your hair, you're doing something and your mind is distracted, and then you can go, oh, okay, and you just have stray thoughts. There's some people have the best thoughts and ideas in the shower, or in the bathtub, or on the toilet, sort of thing. So meditation doesn't have to be fixed in a fixed position. It can be done anywhere. It can be done very quickly, or you can spend 30 minutes sitting there every morning, thinking, or trying to slow your thoughts down. I don't think you can eliminate thought completely, but just slowing things down so that you can actually figure out what you want to do for the rest of the day, the rest of the week. And what I try and do is, I try and invoke the feeling that you can get on a Sunday morning, right? When you wake up on a Sunday morning, if you wake up early enough, right, and you're not waken up by dogs or lawnmowers or people wanting to go to church and all that sort of stuff, right? You'll find if you listen, there's silence, right? And if it's not a forced silence, it's just an absence of activity. And if you can take that tranquility, right, remember it, okay, and try and carry it as far forward from Sunday morning throughout the rest of Sunday, and then throughout the rest of the week, which is something that I used to end my podcast with, just taking that feeling, that tranquility of Sunday mornings, and then just expanding it out, right? It's not about, this podcast was never about recovering from, Saturday nights and Friday nights and things like that, and having a full-on thrashed weekend. I mean, sort of partially, but it's just about carving out 30 minutes or so where you can go, okay, I'm going to just listen to this guy talk in the background. Maybe the sound of my voice has lulled you into falling into sleep and things like that. I do want to do some more high energy stuff, upbeat stuff and things like that in the future. But for now, it's just that slowing down. Okay, now you may have a million things to do on a Sunday preparing for your job on Monday, and I've said this repeatedly. So you may have to wash your uniform, for example. Make sure you've got enough socks and jocks clean for the rest of the week, shirts, meal preparations, and things like that, right? Now, obviously, these things can take longer than 30 minutes, but in that 30-minute space, if you've got a notepad sitting at a kitchen table, you can actually take notes and think, what is it that I need to do, right? What is it? There are things that you're neglecting. Is there housework that needs to be done? Are there birthday presents and Christmas presents that need to be bought, or ideas and things that will come to you, right? But you've just got to slow down. In computer terms, you've got like your garbage in, garbage out, but it's difficult to explain that. Okay, so with a computer, they've got a thing called a central processing unit, and it's the brain of the computer. But the brain also has memory, right? In computer terms, you've got your RAM and your ROM. ROM is read-only memory, and that can't be changed. Well, it can be, but it's difficult, right? RAM is the memory that when you're working on stuff with your computer, if your computer turns off, all that stuff goes, right? So, but your computer can only process so much information, okay? and we're absorbing a lot of information. Our brains are absorbing so much information, and it works the same way. If you slow down, right, for example, a good technique is if your computer's messing around and not doing what you want it to do, right, it's started to slow down, it's trying to process all this information, what you do is you just wait. You just sit back and wait and let the computer churn through what it needs to, or you can reset it, right? But you just let it churn through what it needs to, and you'll find that it will come back to normal, right? Unless it's really crashed and it's just decided it can't do this. We're the same in that if we just spend a little bit of time every week where we're not processing information, where we're not absorbing information, and just let everything sort of process in the background, and stuff will come to you. Oh, I've got to do this. I've got to do that. Oh, I forgot to do this. I forgot to do that because I was trying to do too many things at once, right? So you can write a list of stuff that you need to do. Anyway, enough about that. Hopefully that explains meditation in a nutshell. I've rambled on a fair bit, but hopefully you're a little bit more tech savvy and a bit more informed as to what meditation is. It's just focusing on your breathing and giving you a chance to actually look at the areas of your life or your own mind, for example, that might need improving, attitude, direction in life, and so on and so forth. Today I wanted to talk about, I had my taxes done, and that's something that a lot of people don't understand and you get really dodgy tax advice sometimes. And one of those things is telling people or being told not to earn so much, otherwise you go into the next tax bracket, right? And there's a bit of fear involved there. However, the way the tax system works in Australia, I don't know about other countries, but I'm pretty sure it'd be fairly universal, is that your taxes are based on, so your income tax is based on, or what they can tax you on is your income tax, like your total income, right? Now, you've got your total income, but you've got your tax deductions, right? Now, they don't reduce your tax. What they do is they reduce your income, your taxable income. So, say for example, like I did, I earned, say, $26,000 in the last financial year, and then I decided to spend a few $100. Say I spent $1,000 on charities, legit charities, and I could provide receipts for those charities. So my income, instead of being 26,000, is 25,000 minus any other deductions for like uniforms, laundry, and whatever legal deductions I can apply to my profession. And what happens is the more deductions you have, the lower the taxable income tends to be, and then they will tax you and so on and so forth. This financial year, I forgot there's a thing called the tax-free threshold. And what happens is if you have more than one employer, you should always apply to the tax file threshold to your first employer, but not your second and subsequent, that's the word. So it's your second and subsequent employers, jobs that don't get the tax-free threshold, because you think, well, no, I'll just apply the tax-free threshold, and now you get paid more in your pay packet because you're not being taxed as much, but in the end of the financial year, you'll end up with a tax debt if you are declaring that tax-free threshold. So don't declare the tax-free threshold on the second and subsequent jobs, and you will be in front. Now, you don't get as much in the take-home pay, but come tax time, you will not have a debt. So that's how tax works. A lot of people just don't know that. So if you want to lower your tax your income for tax purposes, don't be scared to invest in charities, donating to charities and things like that. It's absolutely recommended. However, I will have a bit of a disclaimer here. Don't take tax advice from a podcast. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not an accountant. I'm not a tax person. This is just what my accountant has told me, and I've gone through an agent, so that's perfectly fine. Television that I've been watching lately, there's a TV show called Titans, which is basically Robin and a few other heroes from Teen Titans. Robin as in Batman's sidekick, or former sidekick, because he leaves Batman because Batman becomes too dark and too brooding and too violent. So, and it's the Dick Grayson Robin. So that's the Robin from the 1966 Batman. He moves out of the Batcave, so to speak. He goes on to become a detective and so on and so forth. And they have adventures, and it's probably one of the best DC TV shows to date. I think I like it a lot more than The Flash even. I'm not a fan of Arrow. I do like Supergirl and things like that. But this show is almost as, I think I'd say it's on par with Daredevil from the Marvel Universe. So that's fantastic. And I wanted to, I think, yeah, Robin and Star Fury. Yes, I think it's Starfire or Star Fury. Yeah, Star Fury, Raven, who can channel like a demon, and there's Beast Boy as well. But then there's like a whole heap of cameos from celebrities like Sherilyn Fenn, Brendan Fraser, and a whole heap of sub DC characters that are really obscure. Like they've incorporated Doom Patrol and Jason Todd, and I think they're going to do the Red Hood storyline and things like that. So it's absolutely fantastic if you're into DC stuff. Oh, and there's going to be a Doom Patrol TV series based on the success of Titans. The problem is Titans will eventually become to Netflix in Australia, but it's streaming on I think it's DC Online, or DC Comics has basically got their own streaming service. So a lot of people in America, they're not willing to actually pay for the extra money for like yet another streaming service. So I don't know what their thinking is. I think people are just sort of fed up with having to pay for like Netflix and other things on top of it, and pay TV in general. Okay. Did I mention Fred's Van? Yeah, I did mention Fred's Van. Fred's Van was the soup kitchen that I used to go to when I was in dire straits financially. And I've started working there as a volunteer, unpaid volunteer. And I set up the tables and the chairs and put them down when they're finished. And I set up the take-home bags with like fruit, vegetables, sandwiches, cakes, donuts, that sort of thing. And yeah, the sandwiches, Vegemite sandwiches, ham and cheese sandwiches. And then they'll have like, sometimes they'll have hot dogs. Yesterday they had hot dogs. They had a mince, something or other, tuna mornay. And you can choose between various meals. There's vegetarian options and things like that as well. And I missed out on the dessert, but I think it was like a sponge cake with like ice cream and custard and stuff like that. So it was fantastic. Absolutely fantastic of them to do that. Oh, while I was talking about the Doom Patrol, which was was an original comic, but it was rewritten or picked up again and made popular again by Grant Morrison, who has written fantastic comics like All-Star Superman, which is a graphic. I think it's like 6 or 7 issues collected into a graphic novel. If you can get your hands on it, it's well worth a read. It actually makes you feel like Superman while you're reading it. It's actually quite good. But anyway, he long time ago wrote a comic series called The Invisibles, and a lot of the ideas and even some of the key frames from some of the pages and panels of The Invisibles went into the movie The Matrix, and things like that, the concepts of it and things like that. And there was a bit of a legal stoush, and but The Invisibles is actually being optioned to be turned into a TV show finally. No networks have picked it up yet, but I'm really looking forward to that as well. That's absolutely going to be absolutely fantastic. That's an adults only graphic novel. If you're ever thinking about recommending some of the stuff to your children, please don't, or at least ask. If you go to a comic book shop and say, "Oh, I've heard this guy talking about XYZ," do ask if the stuff that I mentioned is appropriate for children. The Invisibles is not appropriate for children at all. Titans is not appropriate for children at all, even though it has like Robin, like Batman's sidekick, and things like that. It's a very dark, gritty TV show. There's a little bit of gore to it as well because of the nature of the violence. But what I like about Titan, going back to it just very quickly, is the fight scenes. You can actually see every move that the characters make, and it's absolutely fantastic. Unlike Daredevil, where a lot of it's shot in like at night, so it becomes really dark, and I really don't like that because I like to see the action. What else have I got? I didn't write a whole heap of notes, but I had enough to fill the time. And no, that was it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it there. I hope that everybody has had a fantastic week, or the time since I've uploaded this podcast. Oh, the time since I've uploaded the previous podcast. You see I'm starting to ramble and I've lost it a little bit. But I hope that you take today, the rest of today, and the rest of the week easy like a Sunday morning. Anyway, that's all from me today. Oh, the code word. The code word is chocolate. For those of you who don't know, I have a code word at the end of my podcast just to let me know who's listening all the way to the end, because it gives me a bit of a confidence boost, and it allows me to check some of the statistics and things like that, just to see who's actually listening and things like that. So thank you very much once again for allowing me into your eardrums, and I will catch you next time. I should have enough time tomorrow to maybe even upload another one. And I am going to be doing some Patreon only specials, but let me know how you feel about that sort of thing in the comments down below. Anyway, that's all from me today. It's been a little bit longer than normal, but I've had a little bit of stuff to catch up on. Anyway, I'll catch up with you next time. Bye.